So it's been kind of a mixed bag for movies so far this year. We had a couple good releases. We had Maverick, which was a lot of fun. We had Sonic the Hedgehog 2, that was a huge improvement over the first one. We had The Batman, which I thought was a very good movie. But then we also had another Minions movie. We had the terrible Doctor Strange movie, and I'm not even going to watch Thor Love and Thunder, but it looks truly horrendous. We also had a good horror movie in the form of The Black Phone. There might have been some others, but I can't really recall. Adding, though, to maybe tip the balance more in one direction, we have the film Barbarian, or as the Quebecois would put it, Barbarians. And if you get that reference, then you get my personal respect, and you spend too much time watching Quebecois cinema. But Barbarian. It's a film that I was not on my radar. I just kind of wanted to go see a movie. As I've said a lot of times, sometimes just at the end of the week after Friday and I get off work, I just want to go unwind. So going to see a movie and having some popcorn and just kind of chilling always appeals to me. And I was just looking at Rotten Tomatoes and I'm like, what's big at the moment? What's coming out that looks like tolerable? And I saw Barbarian and I'm like, how does this have a good reviews? It's a horror movie. A lot of times horror movies tend to get bad reviews. But Rotten Tomatoes seems to have liked this one. And it had decent reviews. And the poster was kind of weird. The title didn't really make a lot of sense to me, but I'm like, you know what? It's a horror movie. It's very rare that I watch a horror movie. I'm not at least interested in it. I maintain horror is the most inherently interesting genre because it normally deals with metaphysical or moral questions. There's suspense, there's always good music, and it's just always kind of interesting to see what they do with the formula. Also, the movies are very seldom that long. This one being 100 minutes, uh, fairly close, but not quite at the minimum length a feature film can be. So I went to see Barbarian, and I got to admit, this was a pretty good movie. Definitely one of the better horror movies I've seen recently. It's one of the few that actually has kind of scared me. Anytime I'm watching a horror movie and I can't guess how it will end and what all the twists are within the first 10 minutes, is generally speaking a successful sign. For this film, well, I probably in retrospect could guess watching it again where things were going. For a lot of the movie, I wasn't sure which path they were going to take, what the twists and turns were. And on the whole, I found a lot of the film actually quite tense and actually quite horrifying. They do a good job of just kind of throwing a lot of elements out there, and you're not really sure how they're all going to come together. There are a couple really good fake outs throughout this film that I don't think are contrived, but really add to the sense of tension and add to the sense of mystery. So, that being said, let's get into Barbarian. If you think you're going to go watch this movie in theaters, I'd recommend just going to watch it and not watching the rest of the review because it's going to be full of spoilers. And there are a lot of interesting twists and turns in this film. So, our protagonist for this film is Tess, who is, I forget where that she's from initially, but she arrives in Detroit looking for a job interview. And kind of even from the beginning of this movie, we don't really know where it's going to be going. Because she pulls up, she's trying to get into this Airbnb house, and she can't find the key, but it turns out that someone at the Airbnb house who is also there is Keith. And Keith is kind of a bit awkward. And it's kind of set up that like he might be the main antagonist of the movie. He might be a serial killer. It turns out that he also booked the Airbnb through a different app, and that it's a complete coincidence. In that there's kind of some hints that he might not be exactly who he says he was. There's kind of an interesting red herring where she takes a picture of his ID, but she never really follows up on it. He happens to have seen an obscure movie she worked on, which almost sounds like he's some sort of stalker, and this whole thing just seems kind of too perfect. But it turns out that this was all just kind of a fake out, and he's actually just a nice guy who's slightly awkward, which I thought was an interesting twist. Because so often in horror movies, the guy who's just like kind of a decent chap is like the main villain or he's a serial killer, but that's not the case here. And that's kind of where I thought the film was going. So anytime I kind of like get a bit surprised by something, that's normally a good sign. So Tess gets locked in the basement after a successful interview. By the way, the house is in like the shittiest neighborhood in Detroit. And I know that's saying a lot because this is Detroit. The whole neighborhood is just completely burned to a crisp. There's basically just nothing. There's nothing there except for this one house, which is still in pretty nice state. You got to wonder why there's an Airbnb in the middle of this just horrendous area. But she gets locked in the basement, and she finds a hidden passageway that leads to a room with a bed, chains, and a camera. So it's pretty evident that they made snuff films in there. And she gets freaked out by this and runs upstairs. And then Keith acts really like calmly to it. And he's like, "Oh, let's go look at it together." And it feels like he was aware of this, and this whole thing is a big trick to lure her. So he goes down and looks at it, but he finds that there's another door that goes further into the deeper into the basement, and he kind of disappears and is yelling for help. And once again, I thought he was just trying to screw with Tess and trying to manipulate her, but that wasn't the case. And there's all these rusty cages and stuff like that, and then this like horrendous mutant creature shows up and kills him, and then the screen just goes black. And we cut to our other protagonist of the movie, AJ Gilbride, who is a actor who is getting Me Too'd for allegedly raping a woman. Now, did he actually rape her? It's kind of ambiguous. He talks about overcoming last minute resistance later on, and she initially said no, but then she said yes. I mean, the guy's a sleazy asshole anyway, so who really knows? But his career is basically over. He needs to get a bunch of money to be able to fight this thing. The only real options that he has, because he's blown all his money, probably on hookers and blow, is to either sell his house in Hollywood or to sell a series of rental properties he has in Michigan, including, ironically enough, the house in which our two previous protagonists went to. So he goes there and he's trying to get a clean up and maybe sell it off. I don't know who would want to buy this house. It's not a bad house, but it's in like the shittiest neighborhood in Detroit. And if you're the shittiest neighborhood in Detroit, I think that really says something. But so he goes there and he finds the stuff there from the previous people, and he gets upset that they're squatters. So he goes into the basement and he finds like the snuff film room. And his initial response is he's really excited because this means there's extra square footage that he could add. And he's just such a greedy, sleazy asshole that he doesn't even really catch on to what the snuff film room is. And he just measures it and is like adding it up with a tape measure. And he finds out the deeper passage, and he's like, bonus, I can add even more square footage. So he goes down, and what winds up happening is the monster shows up and pushes him into a hole where we find Tess. So it turns out the monster known as the Mother is this like degenerate, inbred monster creature who grew up watching a tape about there's like a weird room that's playing a tape on how to be a mother on loop, and she thinks that Tess and this other guy are her children, and she tries to feed them with this disgusting bottle. Tess drinks it because she's not retarded. AJ refuses to drink it, so she takes him into another room and tries to breastfeed him. Tess manages to escape and goes to a nearby gas station and tries to get help. But of course, we love our cops. We love our law enforcement. We love our veterans. They're important. She tries to get them to help her. They don't help her. I don't know if it's because it's supposed to be because she's black or because she's talking about mutant creatures in someone's basement. To be fair, this is Detroit, so it's probably a 50-50 whether she's a crackhead or whether the mutant creatures are real. Also, the cop is black, and he's just like, "Look, I don't want to deal with this lady. I'm a cop in Detroit. I don't want to have to deal with anything. This isn't. I don't get paid to solve crimes. I don't get paid to investigate things." So they go back to the house, and he just tells her to fuck off, and she decides that she has to go back in and save the AJ from certain death. So meanwhile, this homeless black guy shows up and it's just saying, "Look, you got to get out of here before nighttime. The creature's going to come out and try to take you back into her hole so you can be her baby again. And you just got to get out and abandon that guy. He was an asshole, anyways." But she decides that she wants to help him out. He also mentions to her that the mother isn't the worst thing in there. There's something worse. And we get a flashback to that the original guy who owned the house was a serial killer who would abduct women and hold them captive in the tunnels. He would rape them and produce children from them. And he would breed with the children of their children. And the mother is the end result of several generations of inbreeding, creating a destructive monster. Now, the thing I never get about these kind of things is, shouldn't the, like, inbred, malnourished creature be extremely, like, weak and pathetic? Like, somehow this creature's able to rip people in half and, like, tear off their arms. And I think it takes a lot of strength to do something like that. So I don't get how this malnourished thing that has no access to the sun and is that heavily inbreed is like a super creature. But I guess it's to try to make the movie scary or something like that. So meanwhile, AJ's trying to escape while the mother goes out to search for Tess. He finds a room that she's afraid of, and he finds a dying Frank in it, the original owner of the house. And we get kind of a situational comedy scene where he's trying to, like, help the guy out. He finds the tapes and is watching them, and he's like, "Dude, you're fucked. You're even more fucked than I am." However, he winds up giving Frank a gun, and Frank shoots himself in the head with it. So now he has to get out. Meanwhile, the mother attacks Tess, who's managed to get back in her car, and she runs her over and rams her up against the wall. So one of the things that always irritates me in horror movies is they never confirm the kill whenever they're dealing with these monsters. Like, they ram them into a wall or something, but they don't, like, ever make sure that they're actually dead. I'm generally of the opinion that nothing can survive their head being chopped off. So I feel like if she had, I don't know, taken an ice pick or something to this thing's skull while it was unconscious, that probably would have killed it. But as, like, repeated times in this movie, they don't shoot it when they get the chance, or they don't try to kill it when they get the chance. But, so Tess goes downstairs. AJ winds up shooting her by accident because he thinks that she's the mother. So then they manage to get away, and they go hang out with the homeless guy. However, the creature shows up once again and kills the homeless guy. So they go to the top of a water tower. AJ, in his retardation, though, drops the gun. So he decides he's going to be a man, and he kicks Tess over the side of the water tower. The creature jumps down and manages to take the fall damage. So Tess is still alive, but she's fallen off a tall building and gotten shot. So AJ goes down and tries to talk about how none of this was his fault and he had to do it. And he's like, "Oh, the creature's totally dead at this point in time. I'm not going to pick up the gun and shoot it in the head." The creature isn't dead, though, and it rips him in half somehow. And then it starts comforting Tess, who picks up the gun and does what they should have done like half an hour ago and just shoots the thing in the head. Hopefully a couple of times. And then she limps away to the gas station. So like I said, there's quite a few twists and turns in this film. I'm doing this pretty quickly, but the actual movie is very tense, very suspenseful. You don't really know what's going to happen. both on kind of a scene-to-scene basis and in terms of the overall plot. I'd say it's a damn good horror movie, and if you're interested in horror movies at all, I definitely recommend going to see this either in theaters or when it inevitably gets released on streaming services. So, Barbarian for me gets two thumbs up. Good horror movie, definitely go watch it.